read a great quote by this great lady you're about to meet. You know they say dynamite comes in small packages. Well, you're about to hear from Dynamite. Let me tell you, she is just an amazing woman of God, and she's impacted my life and my marriage in a great way. And you said a quote, Shaunti. You said that if I can do it, you know, that it's not God. But if it's something that I can't do and God does it, then He gets the glory, and everyone sees and knows, including us, that He did it.
That's right.
And I love that about you. Shaunti Feldhahn tonight is a social researcher. She's been a writer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. She has written wonderful, beautiful books that if you haven't read her books, you need to get a copy of, and we'll talk about those in a minute. Best-selling books, and the Lord has used her in a great way. She's a daughter of missionaries and a graduate of Harvard, and so we want to hear from you, Shaunti. I'm trying not to be starstruck tonight, but I'm a little starstruck. I love you very much, and thank you for coming.
I love you too, Rebecca.
Thank you.
You guys are awesome. Yeah, it's great to be with you guys.
We're glad to have you, and you have a new book out, don't you?
I do.
Through a Man's Eyes.
Yeah, I cannot wait to hear about this book. I know we've got so much to share with you tonight, but let's start there.
Yes.
Through a Man's Eyes tells them this is helping women understand the visual nature of men.
Oh, yeah.
We need to know that. We need to know that.
Well, see, I've been studying men for years now because of For Women Only, the book that you and I first met.
Yes.
We talked about, and you know, I hate to say it, but being a researcher and digging into what men think, it's given me the best opening line in the world, by the way, when I meet strangers. You know, the guy next to me on the airplane, and he says, you know, what do you do? And I say, I help women understand men.
Oh,
you know,
automatically.
Well, actually, it's the funniest thing, because usually the stuff I'm digging out, it's the stuff that I didn't know. It's the stuff that most of us as women didn't really understand.
Yeah.
And it's usually the stuff that our husband or boyfriend really wants us to understand. And this latest one, it just came out on Tuesday. I was so excited when I got your call, because I'm like, I have a new book out. But honestly, this is one of the things that we as women most misunderstand. I have been studying men now for probably, I guess if I added it up, it's maybe about 12 years, and I've done all these big surveys.
Okay, explain that just a little bit for our audience. Let them know why you've been studying men.
I know.
Just start there.
Well, see, okay, I hate to say it. I stumbled over this stuff originally. I had been working.
Good. That's the way God works, right?
Yeah, it really is. And I had been working on Wall Street. I had this, you know, analytical background. And when I first moved here to Atlanta from New York, I had this chance to write a couple of novels, and one of the main characters in my novel was a man, and I didn't know how to put thoughts in his head. I'm like, you know, I don't know, what would a guy be thinking? You know, I don't know. How do I know? And so I started talking to guys, you know, my husband, or we'd be out to dinner with another couple, and I'd ask, you know, the other husband, okay, here's the scene in this novel. What would you be thinking if this was you? Because, you know, I had to put thoughts in my character, my main character, male character's head. And as these guys started telling me what they'd really be thinking, half the time I'm like, are you serious? Like, it was really surprising. And because of that analytical background, I realized this is a bigger deal than just creating a character or two in a novel. Like, this is really important for me as a wife. I'm hearing some things that things that my husband has been thinking for years and didn't necessarily know how to share, or didn't know that I didn't know. And I started seeing it started impacting my marriage, learning some of these things. So that's when the analyst hat went on, and that's when I decided to do a big study out of it, and that's what became For Women Only. And it's just been a real God story from there.
Yes. I know you've impacted many, many lives. And the first time I ever read your book, I sat in the driveway and I read the statistic that you gave, and you can share about that. And it just, it made me cry. I thought, wow, I've gotten this wrong all these years, and I'm still, you know, I'm practicing. I'm trying to practice what I'm learning through your teachings. But
so am I.
But share about that, just that one statistic that we talked about.
Well, one of the biggest surprises was finding out when I did the survey, because everything is based on these surveys, because it's not 100% of men, right? Everybody's an individual. And so we did the surveys to find out what really does apply to the majority. And this one was a biggie. We found out that when we asked the men, if you had to make a choice between these two negative feelings, and they wouldn't want to have to make this choice, but if you had to, would you rather feel alone and unloved in the world, or would you rather feel inadequate and disrespected? Wow. Now, for a woman making that choice, it's like, okay, two bad feelings, but okay, I'll feel inadequate if I have to. Just don't make me feel alone and unloved, right?
Amen.
So it shocked me when I found out that 3 out of 4 men said, oh no, I'll feel alone and unloved any day. Just do not make me feel inadequate.
Wow.
And I realized I've been getting it all wrong. You know, I've been saying to my husband, I love you, and trying to do these loving things, because that kind of comes naturally to us as women.
And that's what we want.
That's what we most want. What we most want. And I had no idea that at the same time, if I'm criticizing him a lot, or maybe I'm telling him what to do all the time, which, you know, I'm sure no woman watching
we don't ever
knows what that's like.
I know. And watching. I don't want him to be watching right now, but go ahead.
And well, me either, because I'm still working on this one, but it really opened my eyes to the fact that I can be doing all these things that I think are fine and still not make him feel cared for, because I'm actually causing him pain.
Wow.
That I would never want to cause him.
And why is that, Shaunti? Why is a man wired that way, that they need respect?
You know what? Honestly, I think, and this is a theological answer, but as I've been studying the scripture about this, not just the social science, it's really cool how all the survey results line up with what the Bible has been saying all along, by the way.
Amazing how that works.
Just, you know, as a believer, I'm like, this is really interesting. But going all the way back to the fall, all the way back to when Adam and Eve are chucked out of the garden and sin has entered the world, and God says, you know, here's going to be the consequence. And he says to Adam, you are going to always toil by the sweat of your brow and feel like the thorns and thistles are rising up against you. You're always going to feel like you don't measure up. You're always going to feel inadequate. And I don't think us as women, we as women, I don't think we realize that inside the heart of a man, there's a real deep vulnerability and an insecurity. He wants to measure up more than anything to be the great husband or the great boyfriend or the great dad or the great salesman or the great singer or whatever. And he wants that so much, every beat of his heart, and yet every beat of his heart he doubts. And he's thinking, someone's going to find out that I have no idea what I'm doing. And so when his wife says, I believe in you, and actually lifts him up and chooses to focus on, for example, what he's doing right, rather than always saying, well, why didn't you do this? Or, you know, why didn't you get the kids to bed at that time? You know that they need to sleep. I know, it's been me too, and I'm still working on it. But here's the cool thing. Is when we do work on that, and when we do try to put that knowledge into practice, it is amazing what happens in the relationship. And honestly, we just didn't know. That's usually the problem. It's not a bad heart, we just didn't know.
My people perish for lack of knowledge. Marriages perish for lack of this knowledge.
Absolutely.
And what's the scripture that's based in, that, you know, for wives to respect? Is that 1 Peter?
It's actually Ephesians.
Or Ephesians 5.
Yeah, Ephesians 5:33. It's really interesting, actually. You know that passage, it's a big, long passage on marriage. It's quoted all the time. And it's interesting because, like I said, we women, we automatically show love. Not once. That's the biggest passage on marriage that says, wives do this, husbands do this. Not once in this big long passage does God ever say, wives, love your husbands.
Amazing.
Instead, it's all about show respect, show him that you think he's adequate. It's in different language, obviously, but let me tell you, learning this, ladies, this is a marriage saver, a relationship saver. It changes the feeling in your home. And let me tell you how important it is for us to model that for our girls as they're relating to boys, so that they grow up with that healthy relationship. And as our sons are growing up in a really difficult male bashy kind of culture.
When you have a son and a daughter.
I do.
So, and they're entering into they're in their teenage years.
Yeah, my daughter is 15 and my son is 12. So right in there. Absolutely.
So laying that groundwork. And then then tell me how you got your husband involved in this, because these were your series of what they called the Only
books,
series,
yeah.
and you got your husband involved so that he could also help men understand women. How awesome was that? So how did you rope him into that?
Well, he's an analytical mind as well. He's an attorney, and he's an entrepreneur at heart, and because his brain also works in that same way. After For Women Only came out, and it's like, okay, we do have to do the other side of the story, right? We can't just stick with helping women understand men. We got to help men understand women. And so he agreed. He was like, really? But I got him involved, and he's fantastic at digging into, like, hearing what the women were saying in these interviews and going, wait, are you serious? Like, follow that train of thought. And I was finding myself saying, wait a minute, you didn't know that? Like, it was the same thing in reverse. Yeah. And so we quantified it. We did the surveys. We did everything the same, and dug out a bunch of stuff that I think has been very helpful to the men as well.
It's great that you're partnering together. And you both have written some books on marriage, which is my passion also.
And we do a lot of marriage conferences together, which is awesome. And it is hysterical to see these marriage conferences where usually you think of it as I hate to say it, a woman thing, like the woman is dragging her husband to the thing.
Exactly.
And instead, when we had done it a couple times, we drove out of the church where we were speaking, and it was really quiet. And Jeff's like, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing. He's like, no, really, what's wrong? And I'm like, I was jealous. Like, he's so good at talking to the guys, and they're like slapping their thighs and they're holding their stomachs, and I'm like, you get to be the funny one and I have to be the straight man.
It sounds like a great balance to me.
Yeah,
and two books,
fun.
one book in particular, and I don't know that you have it with you tonight. You've got one here on highly happy marriages, but then there's another one. You did 8 years of research I read about, and you talked about the divorce rate, and you researched that. Can you just share that, some good news?
Yeah, really, this is good news. It's called The Good News About Marriage, actually, is the name of the book. And it's basically debunking several of these really big, very common things that we hear about marriage that are discouraging people and causing them to give up too quickly. And the biggest one is this idea that there's a 50% divorce rate. And I have looked into this in depth over these 8 years, and it's not. It's never been close to that.
Really?
What happened was in the 1970s when no-fault divorce started, people started getting divorced more quickly, as you can imagine, because they could. And the demographers of the day started to say, oh my gosh, it's rising. If this keeps up, we're going to hit 50% someday. So it was a projection. But in 1980, the divorce rate hit a peak, and it's come down dramatically since then. It's been falling ever since.
Wow. Is that nationwide?
Nationwide. And now, and obviously there's subgroups, this is society as a whole, right? I mean, there are higher risk groups. If you get married at, 18 years old, you have a higher risk of divorce. That's true.
Yeah.
So, but on average, for society as a whole, we've never come close to half of all marriages ending in divorce.
What about in church, Shaunti?
And that's the other thing. In church, everybody who goes to church has heard that, there was a researcher named George Barna who everyone thinks found that the rate of divorce is the same in the church.
Right.
And he didn't, because he never studied people in the church. He was just studying belief systems. Like you call people on the phone, and someone who answers in a Christian way or a Muslim way or an atheist way, those people had the same divorce rates. But he didn't include whether they went to church, because that wasn't what he was trying to get at. So I partnered actually with the Barna Group, and I bought that same data set, and we reran all of those numbers, but with that one factor it added was the person in church last week, because that's a pretty big difference. It's a part of your life.
Yes, it's regular.
And if the person was in church last week, according to the Barna Group and every other study that's ever been done on this, the divorce rate drops anywhere from 25 to 50%.
Wow.
That is huge.
That's good news.
Pastors need to know that.
Yes,
they're so discouraged, and they don't need to be. Their work really matters. It matters if you get your rear end in the church on Sunday. Like, they need to be able to say that, you know?
And, as a marriage pastor, that's one of the things I say, is that, you need to nurture the most important relationship that you have on earth. Next to God, your spouse they're the one that you need to be pouring yourself into.
Right. And I think you you had talked about a really important connection as well there, having that spiritual connection. You know, between the couple, being in church together, being in corporate worship. So that's really important. Well, if our audience wants to hear more about your books, pick up your books, how can they contact you? How can they follow you? Go to your, and have you come and speak. You're an amazing author, speaker, and researcher as well. So tell us.
The easiest way to reach me is Shaunti.com, which is SHAUNTI.com. It's just designed to be confusing, the name spelling. And also with the new book, it's menorevisual.com.
Oh, awesome.
So,
very good. And this one for women only sold how many?
We're at 1.3 million now.
Oh,
isn't that amazing what God has done?
Yes,
totally God.
23 languges.
23 languages.
Wow.
Beautiful. So be sure and get that book. I think our audience is going to want to
all over the world, it turns out.
How about that? In every language.
Amazing.